should you invest in video games? As always, make sure to hit the like button down below to increase your chance of having your games go up in value. I know what you're thinking already. Investing in video games. I know. Very polarizing topic for a lot of people. But whether or not you agree with it, that is the current spot we're at with the market in video games. We no longer have this niche subset of nerds in their basements buying video games because that's what they like to do. At this point, with the prices we're seeing, it's become this legitimate asset that people are now looking to speculate and invest in. You're looking at video games from the outside, wondering what it's all about. Should you start to invest in video games? And this is a pretty difficult question to answer. So let's start right at the start here. Why would you start to invest in video games? What is your goal with it? Because really, there are a lot of things you can invest in, and video games should not be at the top of your list. Is it because you see the prices going up and you think that they're just going to keep going up? Is it because you have a passion for video games and you think it's a good place to store your money? Because if you're going to choose video games, that means you're not choosing literally everything else where you could invest your money. That's what you have to keep in mind here. For most people who are going to invest in something, you can either choose one or the other. Not a lot of people can afford to have video games, Pokemon cards, Yu-Gi-Oh cards, traditional financial assets. A lot of people are going to have to choose either this or that when it comes to investing. And then when you start to talk about video games, you're getting into this speculative asset area where this is not stable investing. Sure, you could hit it rich with video games and in 10 years you're a millionaire. Sure. But let's be realistic here. All of the price hype and items that you see maybe doubling or tripling overnight, these are items that already cost $1,000, $5,000, $10,000 plus. And if you're just entering the market, it's very unlikely that you're going to be buying these items that already have this wild demand attached to them. So really, most people are going to enter into video game investing and start chasing lower priced items in hopes of finding the next gem in the rough, in hopes of finding the next stadium event, so to speak. And that's not a path that I can recommend anyone to try and get into video game investing for. Now, don't get me wrong, if you just like collecting video games, go ahead and collect video games. I have a ton of stuff that I own that I have no hope of ever going up in value. I own some amiibos, that should tell you everything you need to know. What I'm talking about here is purely from an investing point of view. And if you truly think you want to start investing in video games, what I want to do here is shed some light on some of the drawbacks that come with video games and most any other physical collectible that you can invest in. Alright. Video games are what you have chosen. This is what you want to invest in. So the first thing I want to ask at that point is, are you financially stable? Do you know that you're going to have all of your bills paid every month, no matter what, for the next year at minimum? Because really, this is what you should start considering if you're going to invest in these speculative assets. And why is it so important that you need to be able to do this for about a year? And that's because when you're starting to invest in items like video games or Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or sports cards, your path to liquidity is much slower than if you're buying traditional assets. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're buying stocks on an exchange, I can go on there and sell 50,000 stocks across 10 different companies. I could liquidate all of my holdings in the click of a button. However, in video games and these other physical assets, your path to liquidity is much slower and much harder. Sure, I mean, if you're buying single items worth 10,000, all you have to do again is sell that single item. But again, most people doing this are going to have their $10,000, $5,000, whatever. That's going to be spread over 10 items, 20 items, maybe over 50 items. So say you get in an emergency and all of a sudden you need all of the money you put into video games out of video games. You're either going to take a bath on the items or put in a lot of time and effort to sell them all. So that's the liquidity portion of it. You need to consider that if you're going to jump into video games. It's not as easy as traditional things where you can just hit sell and have your money back. And that brings up another point here, where if you're doing video games, your biggest market or your most liquid market is eBay. And if you go to sell on eBay, right off the bat, you're going to lose 13%. So as soon as you go to sell this item, your increase in the item has to at least cover the eBay fees. Now, of course, these are speculative assets. I get that most people aren't coming into video games with hopes of making 20% or 30% on your item. Most people have these visions of grandeur where you're going to buy a game for $100, you're going to wait a year, and you're going to sell it for $2,000, right? That's how video games work. If you're going to enter into the video game market in 2021, you have to understand that we are currently in a high. Video games are selling now for more than they ever have. And that's not to say that they won't continue to sell for more than they ever have, but at every point in time, there will be a correction phase. Do you have the emotional intelligence or maturity to maintain your investment through any type of correction? And what about if your item isn't going up in value? How long are you going to hold that item before you cut your losses? If you don't have any kind of financial background and you just want to jump into video games, it's going to be very hard for you to make the proper decisions when you need to, and to be able to stay emotionally controlled about your decision making. Another thing you have to consider is the storage and the responsibility of these video games after you purchase them. So let's say you went out and you bought a $1,000 item, a $2,000 game, and now you have it in your possession, it is in your house and your responsibility. Now again, unlike traditional financial instruments, these games are now in your possession and you actually have to worry about what happens to them. There's very little risk of something happening to your stocks while they're sitting on the exchange, but there's a lot of risk of something happening to your game while it sits in your house or while it goes in transit. Because remember, you don't have the money back to you until you sell the game, ship the game, and the buyer confirms the contents and is happy with the game. Your path to getting your money out of your investment has to go through these constant hurdles before you can actually say, I bought it, I sold it, and I made this much money. Are you prepared to have this responsibility? Do you want to have this responsibility of having to take care of these items? So let's say you listen to all that, you're still in it, you want to invest in video games. You don't care about the risks of liquidity, of damage, of storing them, nothing. You want to invest in video games. Okay, you should look at complete in box minimum, near mint condition. Realistically though, you should target factory sealed or already graded games. If you're already thinking those are too expensive or graded games are a scam, then you're probably not in the right kind of market. You need to understand how the market works and where the money flows. At this time, factory sealed and graded games are where the money flows to. So now there's a few ways that you could enter into the market and actually invest in video games. And this is, you could target a single game and buy multiple copies of it, or you can buy what's already popular and hope it goes up in value. You can go target niche items and hope that they are undervalued or underappreciated by the market. What is going to be your strategy when you enter into the market? And that's where, again, you have to separate yourself from a collector or an investor. Most collectors don't buy multiple copies of the same game. A lot of investors do buy multiple copies of the same game, because if you truly feel you found something in the market that is undervalued or underpriced, of course you should buy multiple of it. So okay, you found an item that you'd like to invest in, you bought multiple of it, a year passes, and the item has not moved in value. It hasn't gone down, but it hasn't gone up. Because really, when you're investing in video games, you need a time horizon of at least 6 months to a year. This is again because of the lack of liquidity. You need multiple sales to keep taking place before the market is going to move to a solidified price point for your item. So you buy your item at $100. Then you might see, oh, there was a sale at 120 and a sale at 130. Oh, but then there was a sale at 115. And now 3 months have passed and the most completed sale is $117. So that's great and that's good. So now when you go to list your copy at 117, you're going to eat all the eBay fees and you will break even. That's how that goes. So you might need to wait another 6 months for sales of $130, $140. Maybe then you can post yours and sell it for $130, $140. In which case, yeah, you're going to make your $20 at that point. But again, you're going to put the time into selling, shipping, and listing that. You have to deal with any kind of negatives that happen. What if you have an eBay return, buyer doesn't like it, etc., etc., and you have to take the risk of shipping it. So you're going to take on a lot of risk without a lot of upside for the first bit, whilst you learn how to properly sell and use these items. So should you invest in video games? Well, sure. It's a lot of fun and there's a chance to make a lot of money. If you're passionate about video games, if you think you have a lot of knowledge that the market isn't appreciating yet, or you think you can read where the public consciousness is going to go, then yeah, I can't say you shouldn't invest in video games. However, you have to understand that from you acquiring the item to you selling it for a profit has a lot of risk, work, and time involved in it. If you're not ready or you don't want to take on that kind of responsibility, because that's what it is when you're investing in these, you have a lot of responsibility with the item while it's in your possession. If you don't want that, if you want a more streamlined investing path, just choose financial instruments. Go after your stocks, bonds, GICs, go do that stuff. You'll have an easier time, you'll probably learn more about the markets, and realistically, you might even make more money. You have to understand, with video games, you can't simply buy the Nintendo 64 ETF and have an equal portion in all 296 US games. When you're going to invest in video games, you have to pick your single stock each time and hope that that game goes up in value. So just keep these considerations in mind. I hope you enjoyed this kind of video. If you did, leave a comment down below and let me know. Do you invest in video games? Are you just a collector who kind of turned into an investor? Let me know. Until next time.